Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. Grab your popcorn, your drink, grab the kids, your notepad, your tablets, your pills. Call your mommy, call your auntie, your nene, your uncle, your nephew, your nieces, the neighbors. Let everybody know that Simon Says is on. Buckle up your seatbelts. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We're going to begin with some updates and then, of course, we're going to begin with the current affairs and then we'll have some updates and we'll go into the meat of the matter. And one such current affair is the explosion that took place up at Telescope in St. Andrew. And last evening, the Prime Minister was at a town hall meeting in St. Patrick and he gave an update. And I'm going to quote him here. Without giving details, I will say that the reports indicate that the process chosen to destroy the ordinances was not prudent and not in keeping with best practice. The Prime Minister said last evening while addressing a town hall meeting in St. Patrick, which was broadcast via social media platforms. He explained that the explosives were property of the Gravel and Concrete and Emulsion Production Corporation and were stored at the Special Service Unit headquarters in Point Salines. Um, the explosives were tin up, according to what he said, and they took it from Point Celine to Telescope to destroy it, to get rid of it. So they took it to a residential area. And as he said, apparently who did it didn't know what they were doing basically, or did it wrong. And that hence the explosion. From what I heard, as much as 20 houses, 20 homes got destroyed. Not totally, but in some cases fairly badly. And vehicles and four persons were sent to the hospital and released after being observed and stuff. So there we go. You heard of the explosion. Apparently, persons all the way in St. Mark, St. David's, in some cases felt and in some cases heard the explosion. Well, the town in Grenville, they felt it badly as well. We're going to move on to Emancipation Day. By now, most of you might have known or heard of our legislators passing a bill in Parliament making the 1st of August, whichever day it falls on, Emancipation Day. That is the date of Emancipation Day, the 1st of August. Before we celebrated Emancipation Day, the first Monday in August. And you know that was a holiday weekend. And also the dates for Carrico Regatta and Labbe Carnival. So now we're not sure. Those two are misplaced. And we have Emancipation Day. The first weekend in August, when we celebrated Emancipation Day, is no more. No, Carrico Regatta and Rainbow City Carnival is no more. That's done. Now, someone called in on DM the PM to ask the Prime Minister about the holiday and whether or not he'll be playing jab on that day. this is what the Prime Minister had to say.
Is asking, in light of your recent announcement recognizing August 1st as a bank holiday to commemorate Emancipation Day, will there be and will you participate in any of the Jab Jab celebrations taking place around the island on that day?
No, I will not be taking part in any Jab Jab activities on that day. I am not so sure that Jab Jab activities should be taking place on that day. And I think I've already said that Jab has a time and place. It's generally for Carnival season. The 1st of August is Emancipation holiday. This is not an insignificant event, and we have obviously taken very deliberate legislative steps to make sure that we acknowledge the 1st of August as the date when legally it was no longer permissible for one human being to own another human being as private personal property, especially when historically it was done by white Caucasians enslaving black persons or persons of African descent in Grenada and the British West Indies. So this is not a day to be trifled with or to be taken lightly or to be joked about. This is a day of significant importance to us as a country, significant importance to us as human beings, and from our perspective is the foundation upon which a free Grenada was ultimately built. So we should never take for granted the notion or the idea that some human being is less than another human being and therefore entitled to be treated or viewed as property, not in fact or in law. And so the activities we intend to support on that day are activities that will educate our population about the significance of this holiday, remind persons of their human dignity, and remind us that ultimately we are a free nation. And that freedom stems from that abolition of the right of persons to own other persons as slaves. So I don't want this day to descend into simply a day of entertainment only. It is a day for solemn reflection. It is a day for education. It's a day for us to think about how we preserve our freedom for the next 1,000+ years to come. If we don't think about those things, we run the risk of behaving in a manner that makes us vulnerable to other persons thinking that they can own us as human beings or own us as property. And so I've given a very long response because I want the caller and the nation to know that this is a very significant day that should be marked and observed with the respect and the dignity it deserves.
Okay. The making of a dictator, Mugabe style. You can't tell us what to do on that holiday. If you want to teach history and you get a classroom full, then that's fine. If you don't get, too bad. But you can't tell us what to do with our holidays. This has been happening recently, and it's time we nip it in the bud. We have holidays. We have Christmas. What? The birth of Jesus Christ. We have Easter, the resurrection, right? And nobody tells us what to do. If you want to go to church, if you want to walk the street Palm Sunday, whatever it's just fine. Who wants to go on the beach? Who wants a picnic? Who wants to just stay home and lie down and enjoy and rest? That's their prerogative. People choose to celebrate different ways. And so you can't tell us, but it's not a day for entertainment only, it's for solemn. No. We choose what we want to do with our day. And it's about time we nip this whole thing in the bud. You are enslaving us and giving a whole day because of the abolition of slavery, right? But what you're doing in effect is enslaving us again. And we would not allow that. So if the Jab Jabs want to play Jab Jab on that day, once they don't disturb people and traffic and so, because as a matter of fact, what I see now on a Sunday, it looks like Juve morning. It's all ages. It's not just young boys giving trouble. It's like Juve morning. Women, older women, young women, middle-aged, same for the men, enjoying their Juve in the different villages. As long as it doesn't disturb the general public, they would be, let them play the jab, right? You're a man, 1 minute you're talking about jab, next minute you're encouraging jab, but we'll get to that a little bit later, right? We're going to go to an update. The Lottery Authority, the NLA. Folks, I'm going to start off with this clip. I played for you, I think it's last week, in my last episode, with former Senator Minister Jonathan Lacrette speaking about the financial improprieties that was taking place at the National Lottery Authority.
Can you articulate or can you shed some light? I'm not too sure how much you can share. You were just saying here that there were financial improprieties. What were some examples of those financial improprieties that the accounting team, the financial team with the Lotteries Authority shared?
There were large sums of money being paid to a particular organization, and that particular organization was receiving those sums of money for the procurement. To investigate the matter, him and the learned Attorney General, and he insisted. I trusted that the Prime Minister was going to investigate the matter and get back to me with feedback as it relates to their findings. But that did not happen. And weeks passed, and I remember sending 2 very cordial emails to the Prime Minister, just reminding him that we said that we were going to have a sit-down meeting with the Board of Directors of the National Lotteries Authority to ascertain whether or not they are in the know as to what is happening as it relates to my findings. And the questions that I have re the building out of these skills training centers. I am still waiting for a response from these 2 emails. Beryl came first week of July, and that was indeed an opportunity to forget that something was happening at the National Lotteries Authority that needed to be addressed. Yes? And I allowed them the space to be able to take care of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and also to look after our residents in St. Patrick as well as St. Andrew. And around the 3rd week of July, I did motion to the Prime Minister after a cabinet meeting that I would like to just have a brief chat with him, and he obliged. And we spoke, and I said, Prime Minister, is there going to be a time, and now that, we've gone to Carriacou, we've done assessments, etc., and we're now in the recovery and resilience stage in terms of putting preparations in place for recovery and resilience of Carriacou. Is there a time that we are going to be able to address the issue that I raised re the National Lotteries Authority? I do not know if the Honorable Prime Minister felt that I was prying too much, or maybe he felt that this guy is not letting up on this thing. I can't say. Yes, all I know is I walked into the cabinet on the 31st of July, my appointments were revoked, and I was relieved of my duties.
So you've heard former Minister Lacrette give the chain of events. If you were listening, paying attention, you would have heard when he spoke about the improprieties, and he was speaking about, I'm going to speak about who was involved. You heard that big cut in the clip. The whole thing was edited out, so you couldn't hear whom he was speaking about. But we all know who he was speaking about, Mr. William Batiste, right? So he gave the chain of events in chronological order, very systematic, pun intended, dates and all. He got the information from the NLA. He took it to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Sports. He then took it on to the cabinet meeting on the Monday, to the cabinet members and the Prime Minister, of what he found happening at the NLA. Now, has Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell on his DM the PM on Tuesday, the 1st of July, 2025, when questioned by a caller on the housing corruption and the national lottery corruption that is out there in the public.
We have another caller online. Caller, good evening and welcome.
Yes, good afternoon to everyone, including the Prime Minister. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, there are some allegations are going around, and you need to clear the air with some of the corruption we are hearing in offices with some of your. First of all, with the burial relief fund, we're hearing that people are getting contracts, monies are put in their accounts, and they are taking all the money in their accounts and spend it and not finishing the work. Is that true, sir? Then, second of all, we are hearing the allegation with former Senator Lacquette with the NLA corruption deal. I want you to explain some of that for us, if that is true with the NLA manager and his girlfriend. So we are asking if these things are true with the NLA deal. Thank you so much. Mr. Prime Minister. Have a very pleasant evening.
Thank you so much, caller.
Well, thank you, caller. I think my response on the National Lotteries Authority is no. And I think if anyone has evidence or proof to the contrary, then obviously this is something that they could have brought forth a long time ago. I want to make the point. The National Lotteries Authority, like many other statutory bodies, but perhaps lottery more than anything else, is outside of the central treasury, perhaps the next treasury of the state of Grenada, where everybody, from private promoters to Carnival Queen contestants, to sporting clubs, to community clubs, to people who are sick, are constantly asking for assistance in one way, shape, or the other. But the lottery business is a lottery business, and so the lottery itself also has to manage its results. And sometimes when people are told no, or are told that the lottery is unable to fund what they're requesting, they make all kinds of allegations against the board and the management and the staff of lottery, none of which is frankly fair, nor considerate. We also have to appreciate that almost all statutory bodies in Grenada, the people who serve on these boards, the directors, are doing so virtually free. The stipend that is given to them, the $300 or the $500 per meeting or per month, in many instances is inconsequential and cannot compensate them for the significant time and effort that they put into serving on behalf of the citizens of the country. So when people malign their names and say all kinds of things, that's one of the reasons why oftentimes talented people choose not to get involved in public service, because you have all kinds of foolish people who make all kinds of allegations with no proof. And if they had the proof, then present the proof. So I think that is what I would say. And then on the second issue with Hurricane Beryl, I am sure that with any government program, from time to time, you may have mistakes or you may have issues that may need addressing. But as far as I'm aware, there is no widespread corruption. There is no systematic corruption in any of these instances. There are challenges, and I've said this repeatedly, with many other contractors, because in many instances, their ability to manage the money, the ability to have the kind of financial literacy that is required is sometimes not there. Now, you could say you're not dealing with them, in which cases the homes are not going to be rebuilt because we simply don't have the capacity. And I've given these examples when we were having the financial literacy classes. If you give a contractor a fixed price contract, say $75,000 to build or $85,000 to build a Build Back Better house, and he doesn't realize that he cannot pay his workers per day, because if he pays them per day and if they're unproductive or if rain falls and they don't work and they still have to be paid, he will quickly find himself running out of money and unable to build the home, because he ought to have said, if my price is fixed, I then have to give a fixed labor price. I can't pay you per day. You then have to tell me what is the job as a carpenter. It is $10 for the entire project. What is the job of the electrician? It is $2. What is the job of the plumber? It is $3, and say that is the job. Because if you don't and you pay them per day and they tell you $1 per day and they spend 3 months on the site and you pay them that way, then you quickly run out of money and the house is not built. And in many instances, this is what has happened to a lot of the small contractors that we've tried to work with, because everybody in Grenada always talks about, you don't like to support a small man, you don't like to do this, you don't like to do that. The government has gone out of its way to try and support a lot of our smaller contractors. The minister and his team at MIT have even sought to work with Ariza to give some of them the ability so that there could be some financing from Ariza to allow them to even start some of these projects and so on, because the government process sometimes could be a lot slower, because you have to go through procurement, you have to go through contract stages, and it could become challenging. And all of this was coming in the context of everybody who was impacted by Hurricane Beryl wanting the government to be able to respond quickly and nimbly and efficiently to address the challenges. So I'm sure there are instances where contractors may not have fulfilled their obligations, where the supervision should have been better, but I'm satisfied as the Prime Minister of the country that to a large measure, both the Ministry of Housing, both MIT, have done their best to make sure that they can satisfy the needs of the persons who are impacted by Hurricane Beryl. And I will say this finally, all right? There are all kinds of people who themselves do nothing more than be social media badge on, spread all kinds of allegations, all kinds of nonsense about people. They don't go out in the sun and help anybody. They don't go out in the rain and help anybody, and they don't lift a finger to help anybody in need or anybody in distress. So at the end of the day, we came in on a basis of serving the people. We will continue to do so, and that is the focus of the government, that is the focus of me, and that is the focus of our ministers.
Okay.
Now, this social media badger is saying to the Prime Minister, hog wash. And what you talk about there is not relevant to the question. Period. All about Carnival Queen pageant and who going and promoters and everybody going to lotto for money, to borrow money, to get money. That's not what we're talking about. All politicians, you're accustomed sending people to lottery to get money, and we know that. We're not talking about that. What we're speaking about is the corruption, the embezzlement of the resources of the National Lottery Authority and the Build Back Better project. We're going to start with the Build Back Better project. The Prime Minister confirmed that there is some level of corruption taking place with the Build Back Better housing program. I am, and I'm quoting here, I am sure that with any government program, from time to time, you may have mistake or may have issues that need addressing. We all are sure that happens. But we're not talking about mistakes here, Prime Minister. We are talking about corruption in plain sight. So corruption has to be widespread or systematic for it to get acted upon or get some form of some form of investigation taking place. This has nothing to do with contractors as you make it to be. Not being able to manage contractors, not being able to manage their monies, the persons used it, so they use up their money before the no. The persons used as contractors are not really contractors for the most part. They are persons, yes, persons and supporters who would agree to condone corruption so that they would change checks and the money would be shared between the politicians and them. That's who. And that's why, in some cases, the money finish before the job is finished. Take, for instance, the RGPF headquarters on the Carenage. Politician going to the contractor for money, a 10,000 here and a 10,000 there. And that is why we have this issue. Everything has to be in overrun. Every project has overruns. Money done. So don't blame the contractors, right? I spoke to you all about what is happening in MIT. What does that have to do with the contractors? When you call a contractor down, tell him come with his ID, give him a check in his name to go to the bank to change the money and return the cash to the MIT because he's not ready to start the browse. Sometimes they don't even know what project, what house they're changing check for because the money goes back to MIT. And that's the corruption that we're speaking of. So the monies are given to contractors upfront, sometimes with no job in sight, no house to build, just monies passing from hand to hand. But don't blame the contractors. The corruption is in MIT with Andy Williams. You continue to cover him. You continue to cover Andy Williams and his corruption. Now, what procurement process we speaking of? We all know that you guys changed the amount from 15,000 to 100,000 as soon as you came into office. There was a reason. So that you can play with money to 100,000 with no questions asked, with no receipts, with no invoices. $100,000. Now, part of the procurement process is to verify the financial capability of the contractors. In fact, sometimes contractors were required to present a separate financial proposal, which was evaluated before the actual proposal for carrying out the job. Even if the job was not being tendered, the contractors still had to be evaluated. But that was then, and this is now. We're doing things differently. We are nation builders. We squash the bureaucracy. We don't need that. We have a prime minister that is God sent, right? Giving persons the job who can't do the work, as expressed by Tanti Glow on your heartbeat program to the world. This is what she had to say.
That came out clearly after the burial response.
Yeah.
We were looking for contractors to do small houses, and we were not getting contractors.
Yeah,
So then we
exactly.
hire people. They said they could bill, and when you see what they bill, it's a disaster, next disaster. You know, so we really need to get our people, especially our young men,
Yeah.
upgraded with
Trained,
skills.
yes.
Yeah, because some of them they've been around construction as a helper, but they have not acquired the skill to go on their own.
Right.
You know, and that is a challenge.
You can tell that poor Tanti Glow don't even know what's going on with them people and these houses and the corruption. And she's challenged. Because at the end of the day, it falls right back in her lap. But we know where the corruption stems from. We know where the corruption lies. We know where the corruption is in the Ministry of MIT. And then there was the Minister of Finance, the man who controls the nation's purse, again complaining to the world that there is corruption in the housing program, bad management, widespread or not, systematic or not. But in my mind, the amount of corruption that is taking place in the Ministry of MIT, it can't get any much more widespread than that. Systematic, of course, because they have you go, Miss Dawn, take you to the bank, you change the check, you give Miss Dawn back the check, the cash, she take it back to the MIT, then the PS calls when you're ready for your payment, and she gives you your cash. I find that systematic enough, but it's systematically corrupted. That's what it is. It is systematically corrupted. Here is what the Minister of Finance had to say.
Constituency, St. Patrick's East. How is things in the constituency, sir?
Well, a lot is happening in St. Patrick East, and in recent time I've done some interviews on how many houses that we have actually put out in the last year since burial.
Yeah.
And I must say that things have gone apace. A number of persons would have gotten a new house. In some cases, their house repairs and so on. There are one or two houses that were started and they are yet to be completed. Some of them have issues, I would tell you, because I've heard one or two cases yesterday when I was in the field that the contractor started the house and he disappeared.
Why is that happening, sir?
I don't really know, but I mean, I believe that the persons who issuing the contracts to those contractors need to basically make sure that they vet these people properly and so on. I've heard stories on the road, which I mean, I don't even want to talk about it here right now, where a guy got money and so on, he put it in an account and so on, and every now and again he goes and takes $200 from it and so on. And it doesn't appear on the person's side to be able to continue the project. So yes, we have one or two houses
So we have a management problem there to push that.
Yes, there might be that case this one. But I want to put out a warning out to the persons who have collected government monies and did not do what they should do with it and so on, or use it for other purposes and so on. We would have the audit department audit those things, and would have the necessary step taken to make sure that you can account or you account for the monies that you were given. I know there are problems where, for example, somebody might tell you, well, this is the land and so on, and when I say we, the ministry took it as though that's a gospel, and they went and started building that house, and then realized that there was somebody coming and challenge, you building on my land. Again, we have to be more structured, put things in place to make sure that we can verify ownership of property before we get into building those things. So yes, there might be some learning situation in the past that we have to take into consideration, where people build on people's land that was not authorized. And so we, going forward, have to make sure that all of these things are corrected. It may not be just a matter of mismanagement. It may be a matter of people not being upfront with the information they gave the
Minister Cornwall was pretty clear in his pronouncement, pretty precise. He had the evidence that spells corruption, some of which he didn't even want to speak about or couldn't speak of on air. So much so he put out a warning to the contractors or the people or persons who collected government monies and did not do the work. Even spoke of engaging the audit department to take the necessary steps to deal with the corruption. Yet still, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell saw it fit to cover up Andy Williams yet another time. He don't even care if how he make himself feel. I guess that you're all going to go down together. That's what it is, right? You don't mind. You're not going down, or Andy not going down alone. You're going with him. Or you not going down alone, Andy going with you. But that's okay. That's okay. Two birds with one stone is fine. So with that, all of what was said over there and so, Mr. Williams thought he would put out a statement on Facebook. And I'm going to read it to you. Let me get that here. I'm going to read it to you. Yeah. He said, let me be clear once again. Stay focused, folks. We all are focused. And we, the people, are focused on what's taking place with this government and this administration. The corruption that you, Mr. Andy Williams, leads. You the head crook, right? So we are focused. We are focused, trust me. And we ain't blinking. We are focused on you and your government. A few local contractors who advanced funds by financial institutions. Now, I didn't realize these guys was building their own houses. They have their own mortgages. A few local contractors, listen, poor advance funds by financial institutions, have failed to complete projects on time. That is the simple truth. That has nothing to do with us. We're talking about the ones that you all give the money and put in the ones who probably have account, the ones that Mr. Cornwall spoke about, and put in monies in their accounts. We're not talking about what financial institutions you're telling us about. The government of Grenada put monies in their account. And according to Mr. Cornwall, these people are going into the account, spending the money, and not doing the work. What you telling us here? That's the simple truth. We want the other truth. We want you to tell us the truth about the bribery. We want you to tell us the truth about what's going on in MIT with Miss Dawn and the PS and the cash that's going from hand to hand. That's the truth we want you to tell us. He continues. Now, the NNP spin is to shout corruption in the ministries. Don't be fooled by the noise. We remain committed to transparency, accountability, and delivering for the people. Let's keep our eyes on the facts and on progress. Stay focused and follow the progress taking place in our beautiful island. Where is the progress? Where are the houses that you spent over $100 million on? Where in a year and a half? Where are these monies, Mr. Williams? Where's the transparency? What are you talking about? Huh? What are you talking about? So a few local contractors were advance funds by financial institution. Is they building their own homes? Are they? We have no problems with how they spend their own monies if it's their own monies. The financial institution advance funds. And Andy, what about the movement of the cash in MIT? What about that? And then the NDC put out a statement. The NDC and the government of Grenada, remember, Minister Cornwall was speaking about the government and the Build Back Better program. This is not NDC program, right? But the National Democratic Congress put out a statement on behalf of the Prime Minister. Well, on behalf of their leader, because they can't talk about Prime Minister. That's the party. And it says, rebuilding after burial, issues linked to poor financial practices by contractors. So you guys realize these guys who are contractors, the ones who are not, they are thrown under the bus head first. Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell has clarified that delays in the hurricane burial housing rebuild are not due to corruption, but to poor financial procedures by some contractors. All contractors were awarded correctly by the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation, MIT. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now that the monies were given to them through the Ministry of MIT and the Ministry of Housing, following the proper procurement rules. Oh, we have proper procurement rules. Okay. Some contractors fail to manage project funds responsibly, particularly under fixed price contracts, leading to incomplete work and missed deadlines. There is no, and this is quoting here the Prime Minister, there is no widespread or systematic corruption, but some contractors lack the financial system and the discipline needed to manage these projects. How they get the projects to start with. As I read to you before, they're supposed to show that they're financially capable, right? According to the procurement, right? Finance Minister Dennis Cornwall confirmed that the audit department will be reviewing these cases. If you collected public funds and didn't follow through, expect audits and action. We await. We await. Now, well, I can't say anything for that. That is what basically the Prime Minister said in the clip when asked about the corruption. And I guess the corruption is not systematic and widespread enough. So it's okay. That what he says, he has a phrase he always said, they're not perfect. They're not perfect. So it's okay. Now, to talk about the lottery business, you heard Mr. Lacrette say that he went to the lottery authority. Before that, he was bombarded by workers as to when are you going to come visit us? When are you going to? So he went. He was told about the financial improprieties. He checked out the dates, the information. What I heard from the staff is that they opened the books wide for him. He saw the improprieties. As he said, large sums of monies were taken, you have to say, by, and I would say it, he didn't say the name, Mr. William Batiste, the chairman of the board of directors, signed off by him and his girlfriend, the managing director, Miss Cindy Henry. They are the only two signatories on that account, right? He got the information. He first took it to the PS, his permanent secretary, and then to the cabinet and the Prime Minister of Grenada. What is the Prime Minister talking about? If you have information, come with it. He came with it. Instead, he got fired. And the culprit remained. So what are you talking about? And what you talk about when persons go to the lottery authority, queen contestant, what do you say? He spoke of other persons, all type of people going to the lottery authority, right? Promoters and sports people. Yes, they said the lottery authority is for sports, culture, and nation building. Yes. Not for any and everybody and the politicians to dip their hands into. And the technocrats and your friends, the nation builder, right? What does that have to do with the corruption? And how these people, when they get what they go for, there's malign the authority. We're not talking about maligning the authority. And where? I have not seen or heard of anybody maligning the authority. If they go to them for money and they get them and say, well, I thought they said it was for sports, culture, and nation building. Maybe that. I don't know. But what we are speaking of is the corruption and the embezzlement. 200,000 one way, another 200,000 the next, 68,000, 100,000, 275,000, 295,000. Those are the monies we are speaking about. And we are speaking about not a queen contestant and a promoter and a sports team. No, sir. They're not embezzling. We are speaking about two people. The managing director of the NLA and the chairman of the board of directors. That's who we are speaking of, right? But you continue to cover up for your friend, Mr. Batiste. You continue to cover up. So with that clip, but let's hear that clip again of your answer before we continue.
We have another caller online. Caller, good evening and welcome.
Yes, good afternoon to everyone, including the Prime Minister. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, there are some allegations are going around, and we need to you need to clear the air with some of the corruption we are hearing in offices with some of your. First of all, with the burial relief fund, we're hearing that people are getting contracts, monies are put in their accounts, and people they are taking all the money in their accounts and spending it and not finishing the work. Is that true, sir? Then, second of all, we are hearing the allegation with former Senator Lacquette with the NLA corruption deal. I want you to explain some of that for us. If that is true with the NLA manager and his girlfriend. So we are asking if these things are true with the NLA deal. Thank you so much. Mr. Prime Minister. Have a very pleasant evening.
Thank you so much, caller.
Well, thank you, caller. I think my response on the National Lotteries Authority is no. And I think if anyone has evidence or proof to the contrary, then obviously this is something that they could have brought forth a long time ago. I want to make the point. The National Lotteries Authority, like many other statutory bodies, but perhaps lottery more than anything else, is outside of the central treasury, perhaps the next treasury of the state of Grenada, where everybody, from private promoters to Carnival Queen contestants, to sporting clubs, to community clubs, to people who are sick, are constantly asking for assistance in one way, shape, or the other. But the lottery business is a lottery business, and so the lottery itself also has to manage its results. And sometimes, when people are told no, or are told that the lottery is unable to fund what they're requesting, they make all kinds of allegations against the board and the management and the staff of lottery, none of which is frankly fair nor considerate. We also have to appreciate that almost all statutory bodies in Grenada, the people who serve on these boards, the directors, are doing so virtually free. The stipend that is given to them, the $300 or the $500 per meeting or per month, in many instances is inconsequential and cannot compensate them for the significant time and effort that they put into serving on behalf of the citizens of the country. So when people malign their names and say all kinds of things, that's one of the reasons why oftentimes talented people choose not to get involved in public service. Because you have all kinds of foolish people who make all kinds of allegations with no proof. And if they had the proof, then present the proof. So I think that is what I would say. And then on the second issue with Hurricane Beryl, I am sure that with any government program, from time to time, you may have mistakes or you may have issues that may need addressing. But as far as I'm aware, there is no widespread corruption. There is no systematic corruption in any of these instances. There are challenges, and I've said this repeatedly, with many of the contractors, because in many instances, their ability to manage the money, the ability to have the kind of financial literacy that is required is sometimes not there. Now, you could say you're not dealing with them, in which cases the homes are not going to be rebuilt because we simply don't have the capacity. And I've given these examples when we were having the financial literacy classes. If you give a contractor a fixed price contract, say $75,000 to build or $85,000 to build a Build Back Better house, and he doesn't realize that he cannot pay his workers per day, because if he pays them per day and if they're unproductive or if rain falls and they don't work and they still have to be paid, he will quickly find himself running out of money and unable to build the home, because he ought to have said, if my price is fixed, I then have to give a fixed labor price. I can't pay you per day. You then have to tell me what is the job as a carpenter. It is $10 for the entire project. What is the job of the electrician? It is $2. What is the job of the plumber? It is $3, and say that is the job. Because if you don't and you pay them per day and they tell you $1 per day and they spend 3 months on the site and you pay them that way, then you quickly run out of money and the house is not built. And in many instances, this is what has happened to a lot of the small contractors that we've tried to work with, because everybody in Grenada always talks about you don't like to support a small man, you don't like to do this, you don't like to do that. The government has gone out of its way to try and support a lot of our smaller contractors. The minister and his team at MIT have even sought to work with Ariza to give some of them the ability so that there could be some financing from a riser to allow them to even start some of these projects and so on, because the government process sometimes could be a lot slower because you have to go through procurement, you have to go through contract stages, and it could become challenging. And all of this was coming in the context of everybody who was impacted by Hurricane Beryl wanting the government to be able to respond quickly and nimbly and efficiently to address the challenges. So I'm sure there are instances where contractors may not have fulfilled their obligations, where the supervision should have been better, but I'm satisfied as the Prime Minister of the country that to a large measure, both the Ministry of Housing, both MIT, have done their best to make sure that they can satisfy the needs of the persons who are impacted by Hurricane Beryl. And I will say this finally, all right? There are all kinds of people who themselves do nothing more than be social media badge on, spread all kinds of allegations, all kinds of nonsense about people. They don't go out in the sun and help anybody. They don't go out in the rain and help anybody, and they don't lift a finger to help anybody in need or anybody in distress. So at the end of the day, we came in on a basis of serving the people. We will continue to do so, and that is the focus of the government, that is the focus of me, and that is the focus of our ministers.
They don't go out in the rain and help people. They don't go to the sun and help people. And you talk about foolishness, you know. I have never heard so much foolishness coming from the mouth of a prime minister before. Nonsense, utter nonsense. He refused to answer the question. He did not answer the question. He come there with all kind of thing, make wrong, beat wrong, and then talking about going out in the rain and the sun and lift a finger. You know what you're talking about? Call them foolish people. Who's foolish people? Eh? You had a pile of foolishness. You talk. The problem is, Prime Minister, you all take us for fools. But we ain't no fool. And we ain't sitting down here and listen to y'all and say, yes, 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 sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. No. We are going to point out the incompetence, the corruption, the nepotism, the vindictiveness, the victimization. We're going to point them all out and continue to do so. So you could talk about Facebook Bajan, you could talk about foolish, you could talk. The people of Grenada are going to be the judge. Who more foolish? They be the judge. Because I never hear so much tata come from a prime minister's mouth to explain or to hide, to cover up the corruption of your friends, of your cabinet members. It's so obvious. But we're going to talk. I want to talk about the systematic ways, and I want to show the people how systematic you are with your lies. And let's hear the clip on regularization in 12 months.
Congress commits to regularizing the status of contract workers who are working for the government and Imani workers who are working for the government within 12 months of assuming office.
Folks, the guy, there's a pattern. The guy is a narcissist. Yes, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell is a narcissist. He's a pathological liar. So you just heard him say he's going to regularize all public workers in 12 months. Listen to this clip.
We never said we would regularize the public service in 12 months. We said we would regularize it. And we have begun to do so.
And he said they never said that. He said it among others. But he's saying, and you heard him there, saying that he never said it, and you heard him before. Okay, we're moving along. He spoke of regularization at the stroke of a pen.
In that position. Right. And I'm saying the job of the citizens, of the government, is to fight for its citizens, to protect its citizens, to encourage its citizens to be independent, not dependent, not vulnerable. So that is the challenge we face. And I'm saying it is solvable by the stroke of a pen.
Yep.
And let me make this further point. It is actually illegal The Employment Act clearly says that you cannot put someone on a fixed term contract, meaning these short term contracts, when the position they are filling is an indefinite one. So the government itself is.
Now, this government was breaking the law, the previous government, and this one, according to him, is still breaking the law. He said all of that can be fixed by the stroke of a pen. Hear him now.
When people want to make mischief, they're going around and saying, you say a stroke a pen, you can regularize everybody, you stroke a pen, regularize everybody. I never said that. I said there should be one public service. And I will say it again, there should be one public service.
They all on the same substance. Whatever. What? Excuse me, but whatever he taking, Kiri taking, they are the same thing. And the man said it plain ever. They never say that. And they're going around saying when they want to make mischief. Yeah? In the Parliament of Grenada, that thing is in the Hansard, in the Parliament of Grenada. Right? Right. So we figured him there, he lying. He lie. And you hear him there. What he said was one public service. We regularization to make one public service. And he's going to say it again, he repeat it. Well, where is it? Where is the regularization to make one public service? What happened? He come as a crybaby telling us why it can't happen. Even though the former Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Mitchell, had said to them on several occasions why it was not feasible, why it's not sustainable to regularize the entire public service. That's what he said. He said, but that's what we spoke of. We never said we can fix it by the stroke of a pen. Well, hear him now.
The regularization is focused on the several hundreds, if not thousands, of other persons who do not have those things. And the point that I think P.S. Marshall was making is that in order to treat with that, we simply cannot take all of them and make them established public servants for the simple reason that it will bankrupt the government. It will not be sustainable. So the discussion, the partnership, the compromise has to essentially be how we improve the terms and conditions of these persons' employment as close as possible to that of established workers in a manner that is sustainable. And that involves a number of things. How we agree on a pension formula for them, for example. How we agree on the vacation, etc. So that is what the process.
Did he say not sustainable? Did he say it would bankrupt the government? And so they can't do that? They can't regularize all public servants? And so they come up with a susu plan that they never told you guys about when they were campaigning. Right? Never mentioned it. They didn't know, or they knew and ignored it because they wanted the votes. The point is, they were warned. They were warned. We're moving along. We're going systematic. This is a systematic way of lying. Right? ACP Vanny Cohen and the former COP, who is now head of security for the government of Grenada, Mr. William Thompson, escorted Minister Lacrette off the premises the day he was fired. They were waiting for him outside the cabinet room. I told you guys of it when it was done. The same time when I brought the breaking news to you guys. Recently, in a sit-down interview, Mr. Lacrette agreed that it happened. He explained how it happened. He confirmed that it happened. Right? Let's hear Mr. Lacrette, let's hear what he had to say, how it happened.
Were you escorted by security forces at the ministerial complex? Size of the ministerial complex?
Security officers.
Security officers. Security. I said security places.
Yeah, you're making it sound like a drug raid, you know that. Security officers. Yes, when I exited the cabinet, in fact, before I exited the cabinet and my hand touched the doorknob of the cabinet, I remember the Honorable Prime Minister saying, Mr. Lacrette, I recognize that there is some confusion on your face as to why I did.
As it was leaving.
That was as I was leaving. I recognize that there is some confusion on your face as to why I did what I did this morning. If you would like an explanation, you can set an appointment with my administrative assistant, executive secretary, and that's Ms. Leslie, and we can meet after the cabinet today if you are available. I said to him, thank you very much, Prime Minister, for the accommodation. And when I exited the cabinet, I recognized that two officers were sitting outside of the cabinet. Actually, they were sitting on the couch. I greeted them, and while I walked out of the second door and headed towards the elevator, I recognized that the elevator went down to the first floor, and I decided I was not going to wait. So while standing in front of the elevator, they came on either side of me, one on the left, one on the right, and I motioned to them to ask them if everything is okay. And they said, oh, yes, Minister, all is well. We were just instructed to escort you. Well, yes, we were just instructed to escort you down to your office. And I said, okay, no problem. And they escorted me down to the third floor. I went into my office. I was not allowed to touch anything that was government owned. I was only allowed to take that which belonged to me, which I did. I was asked to hand over the government phone immediately, and I motioned to the National Security Advisor that I have some contacts on the phone that I would like to transfer. If I'm exiting office, I would like to keep these contacts because they're important. He gave me the opportunity to do so, and took back the phone. I exited, and they escorted me down to the first floor. And Officer Cohen took me to my vehicle and ensured that I left the compound driving off. I did message the Prime Minister when I got into my vehicle after I drove off to request a time that is best suited for him so that we can have the meeting the afternoon once he's available, because I was expressing my availability at the time. But between the time, because cabinet started at 10, so between 10:15 and around 2:30, I recognized that the Prime Minister's office had put out a release that they were going to have a press conference on Thursday, the 1st of July, the day after the firing. And part of the dialogue of that press conference was to inform the nation as to why I had to exit the cabinet of Grenada. And I felt that if you're going to explain to the nation why and not give me an explanation, it's sort of like putting the cart before the horse. So Prime Minister called just around the 3:30 minutes to 4 time frame, because we had set up a time, and he messaged me via WhatsApp. And I said to him, Prime Minister, I recognize that there is a press conference that is due for tomorrow. And part of the press conference is to speak about or to inform the nation as it relates to why I had to exit the cabinet of Grenada, or you had to fire me. And I said to him, I'd rather wait for the conclusion of the press conference. Yes, I believe it was my right to do so at that particular point in time. And then he said to me, no, he really wants to be able to speak before the press conference. And I said, respectfully, Prime Minister, I'd rather wait for the conclusion of the press conference, because I would like to hear why it is you did what you did.
So you've heard Mr. Lacrette explain how he was escorted from the cabinet, once he got outside the cabinet room, down to his office, from his office to his vehicle, and they watched him leave the complex, right? He was fired. You gotta go. Okay. The Prime Minister was questioned on that. Here's what he had to say.
Good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister and the other members of the head table and the listening public. There are reports that Mr. Lacrette was escorted out of the out of the complex by security forces. Can you confirm and explain, if so, can you explain the need or the rationale behind that move?
Well, I have no knowledge of that, so I can't confirm or deny, and I'd be surprised that that can even take place. As I indicated earlier, let me repeat. I would have communicated to Minister Lacrette my decision in the presence of cabinet colleagues in the cabinet room. Minister Lacrette would have obviously then excused himself from the cabinet room. I remained in the cabinet room, so to my colleagues. So I'm not in a position to speak to anything that would have happened outside of that. I subsequently communicated with Minister Lacrette by messages. Subsequently, he did not raise with me any of those issues, and well, I can't presume, but I would have thought that if something like that happened, that it would have been raised. So I'm not aware of that.
So he said he had no idea that that took place, and if it did, he's surprised that it took place. Now, you might remember that Mr. Lacrette said when the Prime Minister came into the cabinet room that morning, he said this meeting is about Mr. Lacrette, Minister Jonathan Lacrette, that he had asked the Governor General at 8 o'clock that morning to revoke his ministerial and senatorial appointments, right? So the only person he spoke to that morning was the Governor General. And then he came to the cabinet to fire him in front of the cabinet members and the National Executive Council of the NDC. Who directed Fanny Cohen and Mr. William Thompson to wait outside the cabinet office, the cabinet room, and escort Mr. Lacrette to his office, make sure he doesn't touch anything that doesn't belong to him, and then escort him to his vehicle and watch him leave the complex? Who did it? How did they know that they were going to be, that Mr. Lacrette was going to be fired, and that he was should be escorted to his office and then to his vehicle? How did they know that? Magic? Lie, lie, lies, and more lies. It's like he can't help himself. But everything just unfold before us after he lies. Sometimes before he lies, but he forget. He seemed to forget that what he said before. So we have a little dementia thing going on there as well. You forget that you said that. Then you come and say you never said that. And it's out there for the world to see that, yes, you said it. And you're surprised that Mr. Lacrette was escorted. I mean, how blatant. How blatant. And then, of course, we could go back to early days when he just came in, brighter and full of himself, ego bigger than the world. You know, and speaking about the air transportation throughout the Caribbean. And if they continue so, if it continue like that, he'll just purchase 2 planes. Let's hear him.
As far as I'm concerned, if by October or November we don't have an arrangement where us as leaders in the OECS are prepared to do that, then it means that Grenada has to go and lease 2 planes so that we can fly between Grenada and Barbados, Grenada and Trinidad. We will have to do so.
So we just purchased 2 planes and we could fly through Trinidad and Barbados. Okay. Let's hear it come back.
It requires cooperation from all the region, because you can't just fly between Grenada and Carriacou. You have to fly Barbados, St. Vincent, so you need all of the islands to take part. You need all of the islands to be prepared to give the airline operator the rights to fly into their country. And if you don't have those things in place, air travel isn't going to come down. But it requires regional cooperation. It's not something that an individual island can do alone. Even if we bought a plane, we need the rights to travel into the islands, right? And we don't have enough traffic. 100,000 people, we simply don't have enough traffic to maintain a commercial airline that just carries people.
Okay. So who he vexed with? Who he telling that we don't have enough people and you have to get everybody on board and everything, and we can't just fly plane. So you come and tell us you're purchasing 2 planes. So who you vex with? Who you quarreling with? You didn't do your homework because you big and you large and you everything. You hear foolishness? That's foolishness. Because you didn't do your work, you did your homework. You didn't find out, you didn't investigate. You have no idea what you're talking about, but you're purchasing 2 planes. And now you come telling us that you can't purchase, you can't just purchase 2 planes. You have to get the okay, you have to get the authorization to fly the plane. My grandson must be know that you have to get authorization and you can't just go fly a plane throughout the Caribbean. And worse yet, that you have to, the other islands have to come in and la da, right? You hear foolishness coming from a fool's mouth. Foolishness. So who foolish now? That you have to come now and twirl and thing and you that tell us that. But by the way, as I was speaking about plane, what happened to the flight from Guyana that was coming here with 3 and 4 people? Big achievement. The flight from Guyana. What happened to that flight? And by the way, Air Canada too. Air Canada is coming down, I guess, except for the peak season or the peak few days, Carnival and Christmas. Air Canada is traveling practically empty. Are we subsidizing that? The government and people of Grenada? Are we going to continue to subsidize it? And now we're coming from Africa and Saudi Arabia. We quarterly say we don't have the traffic for the Caribbean, just 100,000 people. So who is traveling back and forth from Africa and Saudi Arabia? Wasting our resources. Wasting our resources in an effort for achievements, to say they achieve. And so for the only thing he achieved from all his travels was a flight direct from Guyana to Grenada, and a couple, one going to be coming from Africa to Grenada and Saudi Arabia to Grenada. Big achievements on his travels. Big achievements on his travels. We're moving along. We're moving along. You see the systematic outplay of the lies that takes place. And there are many more, I just pick a few because, of course, it's going to take 2 days or more to play all of them. All the lies that we were told, all the promises that never was fulfilled, the shaking of the mango, and you know them all. We're moving on. And the review of the monthly fiscal reports of the period January to April 2025, as published by the Minister of Finance. Now, government revenues fell short in the first quarter of 2025. From January to April 2025, Grenada recorded significant fall shorts, missing targets in 3 out of 4 months. January 2025, the revenue, 100.6 million, 3.9 million below target, 28.9 million less than January 2024. February 2025, revenue, 102.9 million, 5.1 above target, but still 14.8 million less than February 2024. Now, there's a reason for that. What they did, they set their targets lower than the year before. For the same month, they set their targets lower. So if they set their targets for $1 and they made $3, right? They meet their target, but the amount before, the year before, was $5, right? So that was $5. They set their target for $1, and they made $3. Okay, they meet and pass their target, but they fell short from the year before, right? March, revenue 105.7 million, 4.7 million below target, 7.1 million less than March of 2024. April 2025, revenue 91.8 million, the lowest monthly revenue so far, right? Now I'm going to move on. I'm going to actually get their estimates here, and we have the revenue by tax categories year to date. And you have the target, then they give you, and that's January to April, then they give you the 2025 actuals and the 2024 actuals. Taxes on income and profit. The 2024 actuals was 65.4 million. The actuals in 2025, 69.5 million. And the target, 66.7 million. So the target in this one was set higher, and they surpassed the target, 69.5 million. Actually, their tax revenues did well, collecting taxes. Then we have tax on property. The 2024 actual, 20.2, and that is the period January to April 2024. And the 2025 actual, same period, it dropped to 12.4. Tremendous drop from 20.2 to 12.4 million. And their target was 15 million. So we were down there. The taxes on goods and services, 2024 actual, 74.4 million. The January to April 2025 actual, 76.1 million. The target set was 73.4 million. Moving along quickly. Taxes on international transaction. 2024, 149.2 million. 2025, 156.7 million. And the target was 151.9 million. Total tax revenue, 2024, 309.2 million. 2025, 314.7 million. And the target was 307 million. Non-tax revenues. Now we're getting into the meat of the matter. Non-tax revenues. 2024, 184 million. 2025, 86.3 million. Tremendous drop. And the target they set was 102.8 million. So 2024, we made 184 million, but the target set for 2025 was 102.8 million. We had a drop in revenue there to 86.3 million, from 184 in 2024 to 86.3 million in 2025. MIA, that is the CBI, which is part of that non-tax revenue, is where the problem was. And in 2024, they made 160.9 million. In 2025, the actual was 69.4 million. Tremendous drop. And the target set from 160, the target set for 2025 was 61.7 million. Total current revenue, 493.2 million. That is in 2024. In 2025, 410 million. Right there we see where the $92.2 million drop in revenue happened. And the target set was 409.8 million. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can see what we're talking about. Now the fiscal summary year to date, right, is here. We have total revenue and grants 2024 504 million. 2025 actuals 412.2 million, and the target was 429.5 million. Revenues 2024 2024 493.2 million. 2025 401 million, and the actuals was 409.8. So we're not even meeting the targets there. So we're moving to total expenditure. The 2024 actuals, 352.1 million. 2025, 429 million. The actual was 400, and the target, was 465.8 million. Let's move down to capital expenditure. Capital expenditure in 2024 was 66.2 million. In 2025, capital expenditure 132.2 million. The target was 127.8 million. The overall balance 2024 151.9 million. 2025 16.8 in the red. So that's minus. Right? We're in a deficit now. They had a target of 36.3 in the red. We're 16.8 in the red. Now, the recurrent expenditure, of course, up here that I called out, we had a little increase. We had an increase, as a matter of fact, there. Now, recurrent expenditure are bills, entertainment, travels, right? The expenses of the government. So what we see here is that we are spending more than we are making. So we're in a deficit. And the deficit, my friends, it's growing. The overall balance, right, 2024 is 151.9 million. So now we are in a deficit of 16.8. Revenues are declining, especially with the CBI. If the CBI revenues are removed from the equation, we dead. There's no other way to put it. Our own tax revenues cannot sustain the government. The debt to GDP ratio 69.1%. In less than 2 years, they borrowed $500 million more already. 2.7 billion. Now, the question is, Why is our revenue falling? We're doing well. We're doing good. If you listen to the government, the Prime Minister said in his budget rebuttal that a deficit is a myth, but a deficit is a deficit. That's what we knew, right? Our recurrent expenditure is increasing. Travel, entertainment, that is increasing. And we are now spending more than we are making. Now, according to the revenue by tax categories year to date, January to April 2025, in comparison to 2024, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Now, what I've noticed is that the 2025 target set in all but one case was less than the 2024 actuals. And that was with taxes on international transactions. In other words, if you, as I said, if you collect $5 in 2024 and your 2025 target set is $1 and you collect $3 as your actual in 2025, yes, you surpass your target. That's the target set, but it is below the 2024 collected, what was collected in 2024, which was $5. So the trick ain't working. The tricks ain't working. Okay? And so we are again in a deficit. We are again in trouble. And it is no surprise why we can't pay our bills. We can't pay staff. We can't pay workers, teachers, public workers, road workers. We can't pay. The total tax revenue, the revenue by tax category, the only drop was property tax, as you've heard, and tremendously, 20.2 million in 2024 to 12.4 million in 2025, with a target of 15.0 million for 2025. The target set was under the actual. The total tax revenue in 2024, actual 309.2 million. The target set for 2025 was 307 million. The actual for 2025 was 314 million. Now the non-tax revenue totals are in 2024 actual 184 million, and in 2025 the target set was 102.8, way below, and the 2024 actual, 2025 actual rather, dropped 86.3 million. Below the target set, which is less than 2024 than the 2024 target, which was 184.0 million. Total current revenue of 2024 actual 493.2 million. 2025 target set 409.8 million. And the 2025, the actual 401 million, a drop of 92.2 million in revenue. So non-tax revenue, which has been this mighty Deacon Mitchell-led administration's life savior, the CBI, took the biggest hit. The CBI pipeline is leaking heavily. which means, people, we are in trouble because that's their lifeline. That's their lifeline. No agriculture, no tourism, the taxes. They just believe in the CBI. CBI is our main revenue earner more than any other tax revenue earner. The Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, and his administration spend lots of time and resources on CBI program, jet setting around the world, especially to Saudi Arabia, Dubai to be exact. Quite contrary to the former administration. Have you ever seen Dr. Mitchell or any member of his cabinet on any platform talking CBI or following CBI around the world? No, no. Neither the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, or any of his cabinet members were CBI agents. Quite unlike this batch, where the Prime Minister, some of his advisors, Minister of Finance in the cabinet, their technical group, working group, oil and gas technical working group chairman, other members and colleagues and friends are all agents making 30,000 USD per citizen, right? Or per application, should I say. Now, lest we forget, out of this 69.5 million revenue that we have now for the CBI, an approximate $10 million of that have to go to the Carifta Games because our government, our administration accept Carifta Games almost back to back, knowing they don't have the money, and CBI and the Lottery Authority are told they have to sponsor. So right now, lottery can help out any poor man. People easier talk about their sports teams and so, because they have to save up for Carifta because, the purse is already depleted since William Batiste and his girlfriend in control of it, right? Our deficit is widening. Unless we forget, in all of this, we are not paying some of our debts. And our recurrent expenditure is growing. The debt suspension of the Paris Club debts, that's the international debt that we asked for after Beryl. Now let's hear what Minister Cornwall had to say on the To The Point program about such.
When will we see that reinstatement of that fiscal rule?
Well, we have said in earlier times that we had to suspend the fiscal resilience rules to allow Grenada to basically rebuild itself. I mean, coming out of Beryl, we have had the 16.5% destruction of GDP, and we need to basically find the avenue to basically rebuild all the housing that is going on and so on, all the roads that we're building back, all the other facilities that we have to put in place to make sure that we can get back to the level where we were and move from there. It will cost us monies and so on. We would not have had to borrow monies to do certain things if Beryl didn't hit us. So we have to be mindful of that also. And so I can see that we need about 2-3 years of breathing space to allow us to basically recover where we were prior to Beryl and so on. So yes, I'm looking at maybe 2027 for us to talk about reinstating the fiscal rules.
Where are these houses being built and so on? Where? We really would like a count and an account of where these houses are being built and so on. In a release on Tuesday, the 1st July, the Minister of Finance boasted of the reduction in the public debt. What's to celebrate, Minister Cornwall? In 2022, when NDC took office, the debt was at $2 billion. with a debt to GDP ratio of 69.1%. By the end of 2024, our debt toll was $2.7 billion with a 75% GDP ratio. In less than 2 years, the Deacon Mitchell-led administration borrowed $9.5 billion. Let's not continue to deceive the people. Where's the celebration? What is the celebration really about? All of this with a growing deficit. We are told that we're doing great. The government is doing great. The economy is doing great, right? Our God-sent Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell is just fine, is doing just fine, running the country into a deficit. Revenues are contracting. If CBI revenues are removed, we're in trouble. But we're doing great. Tax revenue cannot sustain our bills. We are broke, and it is showing. Some public workers and teachers have not received their salaries for the past couple of months. Environmental wardens, debushing is on a halt. School feeding program at a halt. Capital projects untouched or stopped. I believe this is a good time for the Deacon Mitchell-led administration to pull up and stop. Come back to the people for a new mandate or no mandate at all. The country is running on E. Not sure how much longer we would last with an empty tank. Not sure. We are again in the hurricane season, and things are not looking well. It's not looking up for us at all. The deceit, they come out with all these fancy things, they deceive the people, because how many of you are going to go search? How many of you are going to go back into the estimates of revenue and expenditure, 2024, 2023? How many of us are going to read their reviews that they put out, the financial reviews that they themselves put out? And when a few of us look into it and take it to you guys, then they come out with all sorts of fancy flyers trying to do damage control to cover up their own releases from the Ministry of Finance. Folks, it is not looking good. Lately, there's a draft bill, generative summary, constitution, oath of allegiance amendment number 1, Bill 2025, floating around out there, that has drawn some attention. The bill seeks to amend Schedule 3 of the Constitution and Schedule 1 to the court's order to change the oath of allegiance from His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successor, to Grenada. Off the bat, let me say here, I am not against the constitution reform or any form of constitution reform or amendment. What I'm against, however, is the way in which it is purported. The Prime Minister and his administration has been slowly suspending the Constitution, gradually, bit by bit, by little technicalities. They disrespect the Constitution, and by doing so, disrespect the people of Grenada. We are members of the Commonwealth, and therefore, our allegiance is to the King. Now, if that has to change, then according to the Constitution, It has to be done by a referendum. The words of the oath can be changed. So it can be changed from His Majesty or Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, as it was when she died, to His Majesty King Charles, right? The Parliament cannot change the allegiance. The allegiance must be changed by a referendum. To use the Parliament to remove the King is illegal and against the Constitution. We are still a member of the Commonwealth. We are not a republic. We can change the words in the Parliament, as I said, from Queen to King. One way or the other, we are subject to that crown. We are subject to the King. So if we want to take allegiance to any other body or any other thing, is to call a referendum. To try to do so, as I said, is a disrespect. It's disrespect to our Constitution. Now, Constitution reform or amendment should always be on our front burner because there are lots of things in there that probably needs to beef up, to be amended, to evolve to where we are today, right? But this is not what or the way we should do it. This is our third attempt, I believe, to amend the Constitution. However, we all must be aware that people must be aware. The people must be aware. The people must be made to participate. So far, the people are not involved. The decision is to be made in Parliament with a 2/3 majority. Now, you understand the reason why there was a need for number 10 to be paid to cross the floor to become an NDC. We spoke of it, that 2/3 majority that was needed, right? And no matter the unscrupulous behavior displayed by that lady, she was brought aboard the NDC. Well-calculated plans to become the first president of Grenada. Lest we forget, the Prime Minister mentioned on more than one occasion, one I remember, it was a trip abroad, announced to the Grenadian, well, to the people where he was, and that's when we found out that Grenada was going to become republic soon, sooner than later. The advisor to the Prime Minister had announced after the Governor General's gala that the funds raised was to build a presidential palace. Pay attention, you guys, pay attention. The level of arrogance and dictatorship that we are experiencing now as a people. Could you imagine him as president of Grenada, of the state of Grenada? Again, if we want to change the relationship with the king, there is a mechanism in which to do so, called a referendum. No grouping besides the people, the parliament, which is the upper and lower houses, and the crown is recognized by the Constitution, especially this independent caucus of constitution reform and the political parties that they claim are on board, whether they are or not, they are not recognized in the Constitution. The preamble of the Constitution of Grenada, Order 1973, states, whereas, and I'm quoting, whereas the people of Grenada, full stop. And therefore, if you want to change the oath of allegiance, the people must be involved. The people must have a say. And that can only happen through a referendum. The people must be engaged. Schedule 1 and 3, Section 39(5), and Section 111. Now I'm going to read to you from our Constitution. Let me get my glasses here. Because it's important for us to understand. We know they're leaving out certain things. They're not telling us everything. Let's go to Schedule 3. The oath of office, speaking to the people, controlled by the people. So we go into Schedule 3. Schedule 3 to the Constitution, and it's aligned to Section 111. It's right there on the side of it. Section 111. Forms of oath. I, whoever it is, do swear that I will faithfully bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successor, according to law. So help me God. And the oath of office. I, and the name, do swear that I will faithfully execute the office of, without fear or favor, affection or ill will, and that in the execution of the functions of the office, I will honor, uphold, and preserve the Constitution of Grenada. So help me God. Now, the oath of allegiance in relations to the king. There is no backdoor arrangement to get into the Constitution. No shortcut. And listening to the supporters of the Parliament amendment to the Constitution, as they call in on talk show programs, they seem to indicate that the route is to go through the Parliament, and and we will be saving resources at the same time. Now, if we move to, where is the other one? Here. Section 111, and that's the one that they're ignoring. In this Constitution, unless the context otherwise requires, Commonwealth citizen has such meaning in as Parliament may by law prescribe. And it says here, Parliament means the Parliament of Grenada. Oath includes affirmation. Oath of allegiance means the oath of allegiance set out in Schedule 3, which I already read, which is the oath to the king, to this, and the oath to this Constitution. Oath of office means in relation to any office, the oath for the due execution of that office set out in Schedule 3 to this Constitution. I'm going to take you right back to section 39, which reads, Parliament may alter any of the provisions of this Constitution or of the court's order or section 3 of the West Indies Associated States, appeals to the Privy Council, order 1967, in the manner specified in the following provisions of this section. And let me read to you section 5. A bill to alter this section, Schedule 1, to the Constitution or any of the provisions of the Constitution specified in Part 1 of that schedule, or any of the provisions of the court's order specified in Part 2 of that schedule, or Section 3 of the West Indies Associated States, appeals to Privy Council Order 1967, shall not be submitted to the Governor General for his or her assent unless, and I'm going down to subsection C, the bill has been approved on a referendum held in accordance with such provisions as may be made in that behalf by Parliament by not less than 2/3 of all the votes validly cast on that referendum. Every person who at the time when the referendum is held will be entitled to vote in elections of members of the House of Representatives shall be entitled to vote on a referendum held for the purpose of this section in accordance with such procedures as may be prescribed by Parliament for the purpose of the referendum, and no other person shall be entitled so to vote, according to the supreme law of the land. Now let's hear our Prime Minister in a clip compliments the GBN.
Eager eyes in the UK are watching to see if Grenada will soon join the list of Caribbean countries willing to remove Queen Elizabeth II as the country's head of state. This question was put to Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell during a recent interview with BBC's Newsday. He said while this is surely not a time for constitutional reform in Grenada, he sees no reason for having a ceremonial head of state and an elected head of state at the same time.
To be frank, Grenada has had two constitutional referendums in recent times, both of which failed spectacularly. And so I'm not so sure that immediately pursuing such a third constitutional reform at this immediate time makes sense. I can say to you that certainly philosophically, I see no reason for having a ceremonial head of state and an elected head of state. It's really an expensive and, in my view, pointless and cumbersome governance structure for a small island. I'm more interested in constitutional reform, in my view, that makes the government more efficient, less costly, and more responsive to our citizens.
Prime Minister Mitchell says his focus for Grenada at this time as a small country is to let the people's voice be heard on other issues.
We want our voice to say that we too deserve to be economically developed. We too deserve to have a high standard of living. And we too deserve not a figment, but a real opportunity to determine our destiny. And I think too often, even now, a lot of the attitudes towards small island developing states by much larger countries smacks of a colonial mentality.
The Grenadian leader also pointed to some of the challenges facing small island developing states. He says with the little resources smaller countries have, it is difficult for countries such as Grenada to thrive due to some international policies.
The truth is that small islands, we don't have the resources, we don't have the size, we don't have the economies of scale that very powerful countries have. And so oftentimes we have to resort to creative ways to grow our economy and to make sure citizens have a high standard of living. But many of the policies pursued by the developed world make it extremely difficult
for our banking system, restrictions on travel in terms of visa requirements to enter larger countries makes it very difficult oftentimes for smaller countries to be able to survive, much less compete. And what that means is if it leads to poverty and extreme cases of poverty in the small islands, it destabilizes the society.
For GBN News, I am Rena Pet Thomas reporting.
The Prime Minister in that clip spoke of having a ceremonial head of state and an elected head of state at the same time, that it is expensive and pointless. Well, Prime Minister, how about the 20,500 monthly rent that you incur, that the people of Grenada is paying for you when there's a Prime Minister's residence? When you yourself said that it is fit enough to hold heads of government meeting and can work as an Airbnb for your head's colleagues who might need to stay over at some point in time. Is that not too expensive for us? Let's hear the Prime Minister on his DM-PM.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to the Honorable Prime Minister. I have a question, but if someone already asked it, sorry about that. I just tuned in.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to know the present condition of the Prime Minister residence in Patusi. Could you give us an update on that building and what is taking place there, and how soon you will be renovating or going there in the future? I'd just like to.
Thank you.
Right, so thank you, caller, for the question. The building is carded for renovation. We are hoping that the renovation can commence this year. The team from the Ministry of Infrastructure has been working on improvements to the architectural design and to general renovation. As you may be aware, when we assumed office, the building was not livable. It appears as if it had not been lived in for quite a while, outside of the what I will call outer buildings that the security detail was using. The main building itself was not functional, and so it requires some significant work to make it functional, not just for whoever will hold the office of Prime Minister, but all of the support staff that will come with it, the security detail, housekeepers, etc. We are hoping to, the renovation is, at least from the architectural design, it's mostly internal changes and some additional amenities. We are hoping that the residence can be used as an official meeting place, because as it stands now, for example, if you have large visiting foreign delegations, based on the current construct of the ministerial complex, there's literally no place to house them, or host them, sorry, outside of the cabinet room, which to some extent is also a bit cumbersome because you have one significant large table in there with all the chairs around. So we are hoping that we can actually have dedicated space where if you are visiting foreign nationals, other heads of state, you can host the meetings there, both in terms of the ceremonial aspect, the working aspect, and if necessary that, you know, a prime minister also visiting from another country needs a room to sleep over in the night, that we can afford some basic amenities of statehood for visiting colleagues. So hopefully the work will commence, and we expect that once it commences, within 12 months, it should be complete.
That was a pay-as-you-go answer. We don't know. We are paying Consul General to Dubai, Zia Rahman, $45,110.26 monthly. Monthly. Prime Minister, you travel with an entourage every time you go up in the clouds. Never just you and your security, your cameraman, your executive secretary, your press secretary, your chief of staff, other members of the cabinet sometimes. These individuals have to get tickets, hotel, per diem, money, spending monies, yeah. How about the NDC security? The security companies that spring up all over the place after the election, where securities are securing securities, the government and government properties, schools, etc., that already had securities, are now having double. So the new supporters and your surrogates can be paid. For instance, in 2023, the approved estimates was $2,629,591 that was spent on security services. In 2024 estimates of revenue and expenditure, vote 18, Ministry of National Security, Home Affairs, Public Administration, Information and Disaster Management, under the Prime Minister's Ministry, estimates 2024 for security companies, $27,132,039. A $24,502,448 increase. 24 million plus increase in securities for security companies in the 2025 estimate and revenues expenditure. It went up further to $28,044,339. Went up almost $1 million, $912,300. Talk show hosts have security firm. Infamous advisors, aka Katif, have security firm. Photographers have security firm. Cabinet members have security firm. Members and supporters that was looking for jobs right after the election were told, go form a security firm and come back. So to put out resources, to call a referendum is a waste of resources, right? So we're going to cut a shortcut and go through the parliament, which is illegal. They want to amend Schedule 3, which is directly related to Section 111 of the Supreme Law of the Land, our Constitution. What those groupings want to do is undemocratic and unconstitutional. What they are trying to do is to hoodwink the people. Nothing new, because it's the same set led by Dr. Francis Alexis. Only this time, Claudette Joseph, our Attorney General, who was on the opposing side of the previous two referendum, is now affixed, or has now rather affixed her name to that alleged draft after using her no vote in the former two referendums to propel her way into politics. How deceitful. This is the same woman, Cynthia Daughter, in opposition when she condemned the CBI program. Say what she had to say.
No country can run a proper CBI program if the officials around it are corrupt. NDC therefore demands that there must be substantial changes to the CBI law now. These changes must include 1. Making it a criminal offense, punishable by long jail time, to sell diplomatic passports. 2. Making it mandatory for the names, addresses, and countries of origins of all persons applying for and obtaining CBI status to be published. 3. Making it illegal for government officials to invest in CBI-approved project. This is a clear conflict of interest. 4. Requiring stringent due diligence that is not influenced by government officials. 5. Removing some of the powers of the minister into the hands of an independent, qualified body. And 6. Barring persons acquiring CBI status from being able to vote in our...
Today, she has the authority. She is in a position to make those changes as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. Not one word or action coming from her. Not one word. What's the rush, anyways? The two King's Council that are at the forefront of the action to remove the king. Why did you accept the title of QC at the time? Of course, it was Queen's Counsel. Now, when you remove the allegiance to the king and pledge allegiance to Grenada, will you be now called Grenada Council? Just asking for myself and a few others. You took a declaration. I do so hereby declare that will and truly I will serve the Queen as one of her counsel learned in the law and truly counsel the Queen in her matter when I shall, in her matters, when I shall be called and duly and truly minister the Queen's matters and sue the Queen's process after the course of law and after my cunning. I will duly in covenant time speed such matters as any person shall have to do in the law against the Queen, as I am lawfully do without long delay, factoring or tarrying the party of his lawful process in that to me belongeth. I will be attendant to the Queen's matter when I shall be called thereto. Shall, here meaning compulsory. That's the oath taken by the Queen's or King's Council, right? Even as attorney, for those of you who campaigning, of course, for the change through the parliament, you took oath as well. You had a code of ethics. You have the your code. Section 21 of the Legal Profession Act of Grenada states, every person on being admitted to the practice of law shall take the oath as prescribed in Form 1 of Schedule 2, Form 1. Oath of attorney at law. I do swear that I will truly and honestly conduct myself in the practice as an attorney at law, according to the best of my knowledge, skill, and ability, and in accordance with the laws of Grenada, the Constitution. The Code of Ethics also states in Clause 14, in addition, an attorney at law owes a duty to state to maintain its integrity, its constitution, and its laws, and not to aid and abet, counsel, or assist anyone to act in any way contrary to those laws. I further prescribe to attorneys, every attorney at law should bear in mind that the oath of office taken on this admission to practice is not a mere formality, but is a solemn undertaking to be strictly observed in part. Now, why are we trying to break the law? My question to the Deacon Mitchell-led administration, why now? Is this a priority? We have issues here and now to take us through more than 3 election cycles. When we can't access our beaches, who's at fault? Whose fault is it? Is it King Charles? When we're sick and can't get our medication or surgery at the hospital, whose fault is it? Is it King Charles? When our babies and our mothers, their mothers are dying up at the General Hospital, the highest mortality rate in a long time, whose fault is it? King Charles? The corruption that is reeking through our institutions, whose fault is it? King Charles? Minister involved in bribery, whose fault is it? Is it King Charles? Who's responsible for the state the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique are living in today, 1 year after? If you look on the screen, you'll see where a family is still living in Carriacou. After Hurricane Beryl, we have people homeless, living on the steps, on the house, on the tents, on the tarpaulin. Not one Build Back Better house in Carriacou, in Petit Martinique, I'm sorry, and only 10 in Carriacou. Who's responsible? King Charles? Who's responsible for the children going to school hungry and remaining hungry at school if their parents can't afford to feed them on a day? King Charles? Who's responsible for the corruption in the National Lottery Authority? King Charles? The chronic lies being told by the Prime Minister and his crew, Alibaba and his thieves. King Charles, who's responsible? And when the Prime Minister's been asked about corruption, this is what he has to say.
Would things like that worry you in terms of the optics politically? I mean,
No, I think
you know, there are a bunch of people now with too much time on their hands trying to get their job back because of corruption issues.
We're as transparent a government, I think, as Gray has seen in my lifetime, for sure. And I think if any issues arises and there's credible evidence of stuff, as a Prime Minister, I'm prepared to deal with it. But what I will not...
Did you look into the lotto matter, though?
Yes, I looked
Because I looked into it, and there seemed to have been a bit of credibility to some of the issues.
I looked into the issue, and I just said to you, which is why I talked about how you handle conflicts in terms of what the legislation says and what has to happen, right? So I'm saying when people just simply make spurious allegations and come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff, you have to be careful that you don't allow people to draw you in and to make decisions as if you are Jesus Christ and he who is without sin cast the first stone. I'm saying the very nature of our laws recognize that you have situations where someone who serves on a board may have their firm or their business and so on bidding for work that a particular entity is offering. And there's a process and procedure that has to be followed. So I'm saying if someone makes, and you're saying, do I look into the lotto thing simply because I'm hearing media allegations? If someone makes a credible accusation, we will obviously investigate it and then we make necessary decisions that has to be made. But too often, and I think the National Democratic Congress government in the past was allowed itself to be hoodwinked into trying to go after its own and into trying to punish its own and to hold itself to that standard that's almost impossible. When other people are doing all kind of things left, right, and center and getting away with it. So I'm saying we are living in a society where nobody's perfect. And we have to be careful that we don't try and hold people in public office to a perfect standard and then try to hold them at that.
If we can't hold our politicians, our representatives at a perfect standard, then what? We don't expect them to meet it all, but that's what we should aim to do. Hold them at a perfect standard, right? Good role models. Right now, there are more pressing issues here on island, here in the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, than removing the king. And they say putting people first, putting themselves first, they mean. It's always about them. It's the beginning of another hurricane season. The people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique are already wetting. The Build Back Better program has been wrapped up, according to the politicians. No more Build Back Better materials. The hardware stores have stopped giving materials, some of them on their own, some of them by the government of Grenada. So what happened to the individuals that are now under tents and tarpaulin and still under their steps? The ones that are still homeless? What happened to those? Yet we're told $20 million was spent on Build Back Better homes in Carriacou. If you have a desire and you can't afford it, then leave it alone. If you can't afford a referendum, which is the legal way, then leave it alone. People first. Presidential reign after. People first. Presidential reign after. What happened to the development projects? Again, I say, people first. Presidential reign after. Folks, it's been a while since I did a little Is It True, and I just want to sneak this one in here. What happened to the development project, Grenada Caribbean Regional Air Transport Connectivity Project, a World Bank project that was part of the MBIA expansion project to do with navigation, airport security, etc. A 17 million US dollar project. The closing date for that project was June 2025. Is it true that the government of Grenada cancelled that project and we no longer have that 17 million US dollars available to us? Under the previous administration, the project conceptualized by the Ministry of Works/Infrastructure in collaboration with the Ministry of Tourism. Under this Deacon Mitchell-led administration, the ministry responsible was listed as the Ministry of MIT. Are we surprised? Follow the money. Why was this project cancelled? And the question coming from the people that traverse that road, when will the Molyneux Road slippage project be completed? In the meantime, the rains are taking a toll on the roads and it's beginning to deteriorate. Please pay attention to the Molyneux Road slippage project. I knew that would happen once they opened that road before it was final. I knew it would happen. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you. Trying to keep them honest ain't working. Keeping them honest ain't working. So we'd have to move to trying to keep them honest. Thank you for viewing yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.